It used to be hard to find the exact auto parts you needed, and that meant spending a lot of time at swap meets. It's a different game now when you can order exactly what you need from eBay Motors. They have 122 million parts, so you can always find the right fitment. Spend less time searching and more time building with the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. National Geographic's Welcome to Earth, starring Will Smith, is a new 6-part original series now streaming on Disney+. Smith embarks on a once-in-a-lifetime adventure across the globe alongside some of the world's top explorers. Take a ride through Earth's mind-bending portals and observe the strangest, most unusual spectacles the planet has to offer, some captured for the first time ever. You've never seen the world like this. National Geographic's Welcome to Earth. All episodes now streaming, only on Disney+.
Hey guys, thank you. This is Elmo, and Elmo's World is back. All right, and I have my awesome friend here, Abdus. Hey man, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Abdus Salam from the UK.
Yeah, by the way, can you tell us your background in terms of religion or philosophy? Can you tell, basically, can you give us the milestones of your journey, of this spiritual journey from maybe childhood and to where you are right?
Yeah, I'm a Sunni Muslim, and I started researching Islam after 9/11, and the reason for that was because when that event happened, all of a sudden it was just like an awakening for myself and others around me, where I wanted to basically understand what my religion was about. So what I then did was the first thing that you do is you open the Quran, and I started reading that. And that was a 10-year journey. It took me 10 years to read it once. And then I read it again after that. And during that time, I was also reading Sahih Bukhari at the same time. So to answer your question, the reason my journey started after 9/11, and it was just an awakening call where I wanted to understand what was going on, because what I was seeing on the media and seeing on the TV just didn't feel right.
Okay, can you talk about more of the 9/11, right? It seems to me that, of course, I'm from the Philippines, right? That was a long time ago, but I was young back then, and I didn't understand this current events there. But it seems to me that Islam sort of got demonized because of that isolated case of maybe it was terrorists, maybe it was the CIA, I don't know, but that global impact was, of course, that people saw Islam as this, right, this evil thing. Right. And how can you tell me, be more specific as to what it changed in you?
Yeah, what happened was after 9/11, my fear was that one day I'm going to have children, right? And my fear was that my children are going to leave Islam. That was my fear. And the reason I feared that was because of the media bashing constantly that was coming. And so that fear basically drove me to actually try and understand exactly what our texts are saying and exactly what is going on. And with that, I found that there's certain things, my belief anyway, is that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he is very, very misunderstood by the world. That was my conclusion at the end of it. Now, every theologian, if you speak to them, they will say, every theologian believes that they have understood the text better than everybody else. That's how sometimes the mind of a theologian works. I took a different approach where I believe that, let's try and reason with people. Let's try and talk to people. Let's try and understand. And there's a famous quote by Stephen R. Covey, whereby, and it's a book that I've read. It's called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the habits or things that he talks about in the book that's really stuck with me forever is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And that's a philosophy that I've kind of like adopted with everything that I do in any kind of topic or situation. So my driving force behind it was that the way 9/11 affected me was that I didn't want my children to leave Islam, but in order for me to one day explain it to them. I've got 2 kids of my own. In order for me to explain it to them one day, I thought I need to understand what this thing is that we all claim to believe in. And that was how the journey all started. And that's where we are today.
All right, then. So let's go to the beginning of the journey. You know, for example, if I were to attempt to understand my religion that I grew up in, right? You would start with the basics. Probably with Shahada, right? You believe in the Allah, the one true God, the Prophet Muhammad, the final prophet, right? And the Quran. So where did you start first? Like,
what it is, our religion, from what I have understood, is very, very simple to understand. And there's this one hadith. It's called the Hadith of Gabriel. It's a very, very famous hadith. That one hadith is an entire summary of our entire religion summarized in one quick exchange. And what that hadith says is, it's the 5 pillars and it's the 6 articles of faith. That's our entire religion. All of that and everything else in terms of the encyclopedias and the corpuses of work is an expansion upon the 5 pillars and the 6 articles of faith. And it's as simple as that. The 5 articles of the 5 pillars are, Shahada, fasting, Hajj, Zakat, and I forgot the 5th one now. Okay, it's the 5 pillars. I always have a mind block when it comes to it. The Hajj. 6 articles of Hajj. Sorry, it was Hajj. And the 6 articles of faith is to believe in God, believe in the angels, believe in the book, believe in the messengers, and to believe in the day of judgment, and to believe in destiny. So you've got your 6 articles of faith and your 5 pillars. That's our whole religion.
So when it comes to this, I guess to understand something, of course you can understand the superficial, the basics, right? As you said, it's very easy to understand, but there are also a lot of complications and complexities that arrive, coming from those basic stuff, because Islam is not just all these. Islam is a lot more. Islam is a culture. Islam is a religion with different kinds of people from different places and have different traditions as well. So when in terms of practicing these traditions, you have laws. You have the different understandings in theology, and what I've noticed though is that the most of the centers or the bases of Islam are actually individual or very famous or very reputable Muslim scholars, right? And that's why you have Imam Hanafi and Imam Malik, right? And the other, but then. Is that the way that it's supposed to go? That what a certain geography of Muslims will follow this one individual? Is that the way you should go?
What it is, if you look at the entire Muslim world, there isn't one particular version of Islam. Yeah. For example, if you look at Saudi Arabia, it looks very different to how it looks in Malaysia. Or how it looks in Turkey, or even how it looks by British communities, or how it looks in India and Bangladesh. Do you see what I mean? So what it is, Islam has its core, which is the 5 pillars and the 6 articles of faith. But when you look at it in a society, when it's implemented in a societal level, culture, we do appreciate it. There is nothing wrong with having certain cultural things, like in terms of the food you eat, in terms of the clothes that you wear, in terms of your language, in terms of the things you like and the things you dislike. It was never about having one particular culture implemented on other cultures. Do you see what I mean? And to do that, it's impossible to do anyway. No successful civilization has gone into another civilization and completely tried to destroy it and implement its own culture upon another. It just doesn't work. The Romans didn't do it to Britain anyway. So the point I'm trying to make is Islam, if you look at it in terms of the different countries around the world, it looks very different from other countries. The way I particularly visualize Islam in terms of the way I feel it should be, It's the way it's in Indonesia, Malaysia, that part of the world. Turkey is another country. That when I think of Islam in terms of how a society, how a Muslim society should look, I personally feel it should be like how it's in Malaysia. Do you see what I mean? Whereas other people, if you speak to them, like if you speak to a Salafi or a Wahhabi, a hardcore extremist, they'll say to you, no, it should be like the way it's in Saudi Arabia at the minute, or Afghanistan. If you speak to other Muslims, they'll say, no, it should be the way it's in Turkey. The truth of the matter, from what I feel, is it's diverse. There is no one way that it looks. The pillars, the 5 pillars, and the 6 articles of faith. But when it's applied on a society level, it will always look different. Like, for example, if Islam was to be applied but Islam in Europe, in the West, looks very different to how Islam looks in Saudi Arabia. Do you see where I'm coming from?
All right, then. Yeah, okay. I see your approach here when you say that Islam is this one thing that can blend in a diverse set of cultures, right? But it doesn't have to change the people and their traditions and their cultures, but it can blend it in a way that it's still Islam, right? The essence of it is there. Okay, yeah, but all right then. We can discuss what Islam should look like or not. But from your take, as long as the essence is there, then it is true Islam. So let's talk about why you believe Islam is the true way. And on that's really the focus here on the foundations and the truth, and why you believe that you actually you have the truth. That truth on your side.
I'm actually quite open-minded, right?
Okay.
If somebody another truth that is more truer than what I have, I'll accept it. Do you see what I mean? Now, to add to that is the Quran, when it talks about things, what it does, it talks about, I feel anyway, it talks about a lot of other religions. It talks about Christianity, it talks about Judaism, it talks about paganism, it talks about atheism. It talks about all these other different belief systems in terms of what they believe and why do I believe Islam is the truth? I'll just reiterate, if somebody can give me something that is more true, I'm willing to listen to it. But from what I've seen of the Quran, it covers a range of other beliefs and religious systems and beliefs. And to me, the Quran just makes more sense than anything else. But if somebody else can convince me paganism is more true because of X, Y, and Z, I'm willing to listen to it.
Okay, so that means that you can be reasoned with, and that's basically what why you are a Muslim, right? You take it that is the most reasonable answer to life's big questions is Islam. Okay. All right, so let's get down to Allah first, right? God, there's the big question on the Facebook philosophy here is atheism versus theism. There are different kinds of atheism, of course. There are different kinds of theism, but essentially, does God exist or not? Can you tell me why God exists and why you think it is more reasonable?
Okay, in terms of God existing or not existing, it comes under our 6 articles of faith, God being the first belief in terms of faith. Faith is blind. Faith is one of those things you can't prove or disprove. It is just what you believe. There is no way to prove to someone that God exists or doesn't exist. It's just either you believe or don't believe. However, my argument for the existence of God would be Pascal's, what's it called again? Pascal's wager. Pascal's wager to me seems like the most logical approach in terms of whether to believe in God or not believe in God. It's not a case of proving he exists or doesn't exist, because we believe that guidance, belief and disbelief comes from God directly. He either gives it to you or he doesn't give it to you. It comes from him. Do you see what I mean? So an atheist, when they say, I don't believe in God, my approach is, well, God hasn't given you the belief system. I can only try and tell you it's like this or like that by looking at nature. For example, a classic one is the moon. The moon, you look at it with your eyes. God has given you eyes to look at it with your eyes. And then you should come to a contemplation. Well, how does it just, this thing weighs, I don't know how many billions of tons, but it just floats in the air. There's nothing holding it up. That should lead to a sense of curiosity whereby you wonder and you ponder. And the wondering and the pondering, there is hope that you may wonder and ponder and you come to a conclusion that something must have created this. But going back to the point that I was making was that I believe you can't prove or disprove the existence of God. But Pascal's wager is a logical approach in terms of if you do believe in God and you die, then you've got something good that you're waiting for. And if you disbelieved and you die, then there's something bad waiting for you. Do you see what I'm coming from? What has anyone got to lose by believing in God? But you've got a lot to lose if you don't believe in God and you die and you've basically made a mistake. Do you see where I'm coming from? It's the Pascal's wager.
So actually, if you think about it, like literally, Pascal's wager literally means gambling, right?
Yeah.
In a way, you yourself, as a Muslim, you're not allowed to gamble. All right, and but in a way, you're wagering your belief itself. If that's your argument.
I agree with you, but I would say that this is a gamble, and I agree with Pascal entirely when he goes, this is a gamble that every single human being, everyone who's got sense or ration, isn't mentally disabled or anything, but sane person, is making this gamble. He's doing this gamble anyway. We're all doing this gamble. So he says, well, if you're going to gamble it, the wise gamble to do is to believe he exists. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. And if you're right, happy days.
Okay. Yeah, I was just kidding, by the way. But I actually respect the Pascal's wager. And it's a really good argument used by many people. But the main argument against that is, okay, but which God, right? There are thousands of gods and everything. So why your God and not all these other gods?
To that, my argument is quite simple. We believe there is only one God. There is only one God. Now, if you want to call God God, you call him God. If you want to call him Allah, you call him Allah. If you want to call him Bhagwan, call him Bhagwan. Whatever name you want to give it to him, just give it to him. It's a name. Do you see what I mean? And we believe that God has 99 names and attributes anyway. See where I'm coming from? So it's not like we believe in 99 different gods. It's one God, but he's got 99 names, 99 attributes, we call them. Do you see what I mean? So when you say which God, to me that just says, well, there is only one God. Do you see what I mean? If somebody says to me, there's another God called this God, well, I'll say, well, that's not a real God. Do you see what I mean? The real God isn't an idol, isn't a statue, isn't a thing. It's something invisible. Whatever that invisible thing is, whatever you want to name it, that is God. As long as it's invisible. Does that make sense?
So yeah, I get your point here. All right, but so in terms of the potential to be real, though, right? Let's say that let's say Odin, right, and compared to Allah, why is then they are actually defined differently, right? The Odin is this Viking god that has one eye and does take and ruling in Valhalla. While Allah is the unfathomable and the monotheist God, right? Yeah. And in Islam, so they're utterly very different characters. They're very differently defined. So why is Allah more reasonable to be believed than Odin?
Okay, I don't know much about Odin, but someone was to tell me Odin was born, Odin has a mother, Odin has a father, Odin has children, Odin has Odin eats, Odin sleeps, then I'd say, well, that's not God. Do you see what I mean? Because God doesn't sleep. God wasn't born. God doesn't give birth. God isn't like us.
But what's your basis though? Like, who says that? Like that? Sure, from your definition, that's God. But why is your God more that has these characteristics more realistic or more proven to be real?
The only place that I can find out information about who God is and what he is our scripture. Because this is information that human beings, if we were to try and think about these things by ourselves, we'd come to so many different conclusions. Do you see where I'm coming from? Like, for example, you said that people who believe in Odin, they probably pondered and wondered about it on themselves, and they thought, well, God must be like this or God must be like that. This is an element, and it comes down to one of the 6 articles of faith, believing in the books. It's just one of those blind faith things that you pick up the book and you put your trust in it and you say, this is what the book says about God. This is how he's described. And it's the chapter that describes God. There's quite a few, but the most specific one that we as Muslims quote is Surah Ikhlas. Qul huwa Allahu ahad. That's how it starts. Say he is one. And it's only, I think it's about 4 verses or 6 verses. That is our description of God. And we've got our 99 characters as well. So the point I'm making is, in terms of why do I believe our God looks like this and is like this, blind faith into our scripture.
All right. Well, what I've gotten from you so far is this, right? I ask you, why do you believe in God? Well, Pascal's wager. But okay, so why do you believe in this specific God, Allah? And you say, well, that's contingent on my faith, on my scripture, which is the Quran, right? And how the Quran has presented Allah, and because we as humans, we could never arrive at believing in God by ourselves. You know, we need a special revelation. So so is that, or I want to go back, Fudo, right? Because I want you to be more exhaustive of your reasons as to why you believe in God. Yeah, Pascal's wager, sure, maybe it's sufficient, but do you have other reasons as to why you believe in God?
Other reasons as to why I believe in God. I'd say, okay, how do I explain this one? Seeing is ultimately believing. Right? If you experience something with your senses, whether it's your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your taste, your skin, whatever it is, right? If one of your senses experiences something, you believe it as absolutely truthful. Do you get it? If you don't experience anything with your senses, it is a sort of blind faith and belief. However, what God has also given us is this thing called dreams. Dreams, yeah?
Interesting.
Dreams. Now, dreams are one of those really strange, awesome things that when you're in a dream, you absolutely believe you're there. You're seeing things with your eyes. You feel you're there. Do you understand where I'm coming from? A dream is like a strange thing. I believe in God because I've been blessed with dreams, certain dreams that God has shown me certain things where I believe he exists. So not only Pascal's wager, if you want to go really deep into it, Pascal's wager is one way of looking at it, but I will also accept and say that to really believe in something, you have to experience it with your own senses. And a dream is something where you experience something with your senses. Does that make sense?
So in a way, you believe in Allah because of Pascal's wager and because you dreamed of Allah?
Allah's shown me things in dreams, yeah. Yeah, he has shown me certain things. But at the same time, in our religion as well, we don't talk about these dreams because we're told not to talk about them as well, because there's a verse in the Quran where it says, there was one particular dream, I forgot what his name now was. There was a prophet who went to his dad and he said to his dad, I've seen a dream of such and such. And his father said to him, don't ever tell anyone what you saw, because what then happens is people turn against you. Do you understand where I'm coming from? So we don't discuss what we saw because we're advised not to do it. Is that okay?
Right, though, when it comes to the dreams, right? Let's say I do agree with Pascal's wager, but I dreamed of a different god. I dreamt of Odin, and he told me that I would one day drink with him in the Valhalla with Thor and everything. Would that dream be reliable by your definition?
So that's a very good question, because dreams can be divine. Yeah, they can also be devilish. You see what I mean? It can be both. You as an individual have to decide for yourself as to what I saw. Was it a good dream or was it a bad dream? You have to decide that. Do you see where I'm coming from? Let's just say, for example, you've got, let's just say I was speaking to a non-Muslim or a Hindu or somebody, and I was telling them about something. And then he went and had a dream about Islam. I'd say that was a good dream. He will translate that as, no, that was a misguided dream. That was the devil. That was something bad that I saw. An individual has to be truthful with themselves in terms of what they saw and how they feel when they wake up in the morning, or how they feel about that dream, years later. Is it one of those dreams that you can never forget? Is it one of those dreams, or is it a dream that you just had and then the next morning or a couple of days later or whatever, you forget about it? Then it wasn't a meaningful dream. But if you've had a meaningful, powerful dream, one of those dreams that you never forget, you have to ask yourself, was that divine or was that devilish? That's an individual question.
I see. Okay, then all right. Let's leave it to the dreamer to decide whether or not his dream is actually divine or devilish, as you have said. Okay, but let's go back to scripture, though, right? We've covered God here. Why you believe in God, and some part of it is contingent on your belief in scripture. So tell me, why the Quran? Why
the Quran? Right, okay. That's a very good question. Like I said earlier on, what I was saying was, for an individual, if you want to know what all the other belief systems are, and I say all quite hesitantly because I don't know what all the world's belief systems are, but the Quran does touch upon and expand upon quite a lot of the belief systems. For example, paganism, which is an idol worshipping thing, it heavily touches upon that because Islam came into a pagan society and it was trying to convince them of monotheism. So it talks a lot about paganistic belief system. At the same time, we are Abrahamic, but we're not Christian and we're not Jewish. So it talks a lot about the differences and the similarities and what the Christians believe and what they say and what the Jews believe and what they say. So, and then at the same time, Islam talks about its own ideas in terms of what its belief system is. So why do I believe in Islam? Is because I believe when I picked up the Quran, I was given a lot of information about quite a lot of belief systems out there. Do you see what I mean? One book gave me the arguments for and against for quite a lot of belief systems. And I thought, well, this sounds about right to me. But at the same time, if somebody else has got more truthfulness than what I've got, then I'm willing to listen to it. But I've not come across anything.
Yeah. So in a way, what you're saying is like, hey, the Quran here sort of already covers all the belief systems so far, and then at least all the recognizable and the ones that actually matter. And the Quran has presented the counter arguments to it and have stumped them already. And the Quran seems to be about right, and I'm satisfied with this. Is that sort of the thing that?
Yeah, it's as simple as that. Does that sound too easy? I don't know, but to me, it's as simple as
respect. Yeah, that's cool. All right. So let's say though that there are so many counter arguments with the Islam, but of course you are in fact a practicing Muslim, right? Sunni. And I wanna cover this topic for a very long time because you seem to be very familiar with the Hadith and the Quran, right? And I want to understand your take on what's the word for this? It's theology, right? Being a Maliki, the schools of thought. Yeah, and
okay.
All right, can you go down that path and break it for us?
Okay, what it is, the four imams that we have right now, they weren't the only ones when Islam was being formulated. There was Imam Malik, Imam Hanifa, Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. There was also Imam Tabari. There might have been others as well, right? Now, what they did was they were trying to understand religion from our sources. They're all Sunni sources, the Quran and the Hadith. And they were trying to solve problems, societal problems. Like, for example, when it came to giving zakat, Imam Malik said, you don't give zakat, you don't pay zakat, which is charity or tax, on jewelry, gold jewelry. Others argued, no, you do pay tax on gold jewelry. It's these little differences of opinion that they had. I'm quite open-minded to all four schools of thought that are currently available in society, where what my approach is, well, I look at the four different arguments where sometimes they agree, sometimes they will differ. And I say, well, if you look at an argument, they've got a valid argument in terms of where they're coming from. If you look at the logic that they've followed in terms of how they've come to their argument and how they've come to their conclusion, I think, well, it's an opinion, and it's down to individuals to, adopt the opinion of the four imams, or their own if they want, to what makes more reasonable sense to them. So you see where I'm coming from? I don't see a conflict within our four schools of thought. It's not conflict. It's just a difference of opinion. And, you follow the one that makes the most sense to you. However, if you don't want to go through the process of studying the four different schools of thought and finding out which one is right, our scholars, and when I say our scholars, I've heard this being said by our elders, sorry, not our scholars, our elders. What they say is, follow one and just follow it. Just follow it blindly. Don't worry about it. Just whichever one you want to follow, just follow it. And they're all correct. All four of them are correct. Just follow one of them. But if you want to go into a deep study of which one is right, you'll find that they're all right. But one will probably feel more right to you as an individual, and that's an individual choice out of the four. So the point I'm trying to make is there isn't a conflict between the four. They're just difference of opinions. And naturally, as human beings, we can read one sentence and come to two different understandings of the same sentence. That is possible to do. And the Quran is one of those books where, if me and you were to read something, a chapter or say, we'll have a different conclusion and an understanding of what the book is actually trying to get us to do than what I will have and what you will have. It's just a difference of opinion. And, that's my understanding of the four schools of thought.
So a difference on opinion. But of course, when it comes to the, let's say, Salafi, right? And this is the big topic that I've encountered when it comes to the differences that Salafi, does, and the Ashari, does God have physical hands or physical, body? And if you ask a Salafi, right, because they would read the Quran in a very literal way, right, and they would say, yes, he does. So this is not just difference in opinion, right, in terms of this.
Okay. I do understand their argument in terms of the Salafi argument, but they do also say God does have a hand, but it's not a hand that looks like our hand. And God does also say in our text that man has been made in God's image. Do you see what I mean? Man has been made. We, human beings, have been made in God's image. Now, what does that mean? We've got a face, and there's also a hadith of our Prophet ﷺ where he goes, don't hit a man on his face, because that is, he kind of like, I can't remember exactly what he said, was he kind of like made the impression that that's kind of like God's face sort of thing. It's a reason not to punch. So, another person in the face. So the point I'm making is God has made us in his image, but at the same time, he's told us he is nothing like what we can imagine. So does he have a hand? He has a hand, but it's not like something we can imagine. Does he have other limbs? Maybe, but it's not like something we can imagine. The furthest we can imagine God is what our Prophet ﷺ described God physically as. Now, when, I don't know if you know about it, the Isra Miraj, where Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he traveled to the heavens and he met with God. Now, when he came back, there was another companion that they were curious as well. They wanted to know, the early Muslims, they wanted to know, well, what does God look like? So one of the companions, he went up to a Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and he goes to him, did you see God? And the Prophet goes, how can I see God? How can I see God? So he didn't say yes, he didn't say no. How can I see God was his response. To me, that implies, no, he didn't see God. So then the question is, well, you met God, what did you see? My research led me to what Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saw of God during the Isra Miraj in terms of what he physically looks like with his eyes was the veil that protects God, which was light. So what Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saw as God was light, white light, but behind that white light is God. So light is a veil that protects God, or veils, or hides God. There's also another hadith where Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu, what he turned around and what he said was, he goes, if that veil was to be removed, whatever God sees with his eyes will be destroyed. So there is a veil, white light veil, that protects God. And as far as we can imagine in terms of what God physically looks like with our eyes is white light.
Okay, yeah, and this is interesting though. Like when you say that God physically looks like white light, do you mean that?
No, I'm not saying he looks like white light. No, don't get me wrong with that. I'm not saying he looks like white light. I'm saying the furthest Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saw of God was the veil that covers God.
That covers. Okay. No, but the veil is not God himself.
The veil is not God, no.
Well, all right then. But the question was about the disagreement, right? The contention between, let's say, various schools of thought. Like say, for example, you have a lot of conversations here, right? And when you say it's just a difference of opinion, no. Really, because if someone who's not a Salafi would hear of their opinion, as you say, which is only a difference from your take, they would actually call it like something like heresy or blasphemy, right? To say that God has something, there's a body like is comparable to ours, something like that.
There is, you could argue that it's like one of those. It depends on how big you want to make a mole, how big you want to make into a mole. Do you see where I'm coming from? You could say, okay, the Salafis are saying God has limbs, therefore they're not Muslim. You could argue that. But I take a different approach, where our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he said in one hadith, he goes, the basic belief of a Muslim is to say La ilaha illallah. That's the absolute basic. Anyone who says La ilaha illallah, which means I testify that there is only one God, is a Muslim. That's the very, very basic behind it. You can then expand upon that and say, well, if somebody prays towards our Qibla, i.e. the Kaaba, prays towards the Kaaba, then he's a Muslim because he's praying towards the same direction that we pray towards. Do you see where I'm coming from? Someone who believes in the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he's a Muslim. Okay, he might then have other beliefs that are different to other people. Well, these are things where you can either you have to look at it very individually. Do you see where I'm coming from? Like it's got to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. My first approach is to try and work out, try and be inclusive of people rather than try and exclude people out of the religion. My approach is, well, let's try and work together and try and let's try and keep you in rather than say, straight away you've got a difference of opinion or exclude.
All right. Well, this is really good, right? When you say inclusivity, because I've studied this sect, Islamic sect. There's millions of its followers. Are you familiar with the Ahmadiyyas?
Yeah, I'm familiar with them. Yeah.
All right. Well, the Ahmadiyyas believe that they have this this leader, right? He's an imam as well. I think it's Imam Ahmad. Is that what they call his
Mirza
name?
Ghulam Ahmad. Yeah. He's got quite a few names. Yeah.
And Ahmad is a very recent professor, but he came out, a scholar. He came out and he sort of had gained many followers, and he identified himself as a prophet too. But he recognized the Prophet Muhammad as the final prophet. But he's sort of like eschatological prophet, in the end times sort of prophet, and so he's not adding to the Quran. He's sort of like fulfilling it, as he would say, and he also expected the Prophet Isa to come down and everything, and they view themselves as true Muslims. That in terms of, as you say, the Allah ilaha. I apologize if I butchered that, but
I know what you mean.
Yeah, and so if they do believe that, they do believe the six articles of Islam, or 5 pillars as well, right? So in this sense, would you count them in terms of inclusivity, because they also just have a difference in opinion, right? And from your perspective.
Okay, I see what you mean. That the Ahmadi question is a very difficult one, because one of the hadiths that we believe in, and they believe in it as well. They claim to believe in these hadiths as well. And within our hadiths, and it's not so clear as in the Quran, but from what I recall of the hadiths, it's absolutely clear that Muhammad is the last messenger, is the last prophet. And anybody who comes after him claiming to be a prophet is lying. Do you see what I mean? So this hadith says they claim to believe in our hadith. But when it comes to these sort of hadiths, they don't believe. Whatever reason, they just don't believe. So,
question, maybe they just have a difference in opinion, right? In terms of how they understand it.
Well, okay, if I was to be inclusive with them, I'll say they are a type of Muslim. Like you've got Sunni Muslims, you've got Shia Muslims, you've got Ahmadi Muslims, you've got probably other different types of Muslims. If I was to be inclusive, if I was a politician, and I was in charge of Pakistan, for argument's sake, whereby, you do, as a politician, you do want your communities, diverse communities, all to get along and work with each other. I'd say they are a type of Muslim. Not the type, not the correct type or anything, a type of Muslim. But if I was wearing my Sunni hat, and I was looking at it from a pure theological scriptural point of view, looking at the books that they believe and we believe at the same time, then I can't rationally argue how they can believe in another prophet after our prophet. The solution for them would have been quite simple. All they had to say was that Mirza Ghulam was a saint. If you said he was a saint or a holy man or a Sherman or something like that, not a problem. But as soon as you say he's a prophet, then automatically alarm bells start to ring. You bring out the text, and it's either the text is wrong or Mirza Ghulam is wrong, and he's not a prophet. Do you see what I mean? And I'd rather say that the text is correct, and the individual who's claiming to be a prophet after our prophet, whilst at the same time claiming to believe in the same books as we do, we both can't be right now. But if I was to be inclusive, I'll say, well, okay, they are a type.
Well, okay, let's take it at that. I'm not an Ahmadi apologist, but I'm glad to hear your take on it. All right. Well, let's see here, though. Okay, when it comes to the Prophet Muhammad, right? The third very important aspect as well. Peace be upon him, of course. And can you tell me, there are so many takes on his character, on people saying like he's a warlord, he's this, that, and then like marrying his 9-year-old and all of that. Like, how would you respond to all these contentions?
What I'd say about Muhammad was, I feel anyway, that in the current society in which we live, he was a very, very misunderstood person. how do you describe him? How do you say? That's the thing. I can't put into words how I would describe our prophet. I just, how would I describe our prophet? He was a sort of character where people around him wanted to be around him. Do you see what I mean? He was one of those charismatic people where people enjoyed his company. Do you see what I mean? They always just wanted to be around him, whether it's, men, women, whatever. They always wanted his attention. And the way he used to approach people was he used to make people feel they're special. They're the most important people. So one of the things what he used to do was, and it's just one example, is when he used to talk to people, he used to turn his entire body around and he used to give them one-on-one attention and communication. Now imagine somebody who is very, very important, and you speak to them and they turn their body around and they give you full attention and they're listening to you. What that then does is it sort of like empowers other individuals. You see where I'm coming from? He had this, I don't know how you explain it, he had this sort of persona, charisma, or character about him where the people around him would want his attention and they'd feel happy when they're around him. It's a very rare sort of trait. I don't know, I can't think of another leader that when I think of other leaders and I think, well, how would our Prophet ﷺ been? I think of Nelson Mandela. I think of these sort of leaders. Nelson Mandela would have had that sort of, he would have struggled throughout his life. And at the end, he would have been a joyous sort of character and a figure. These are the sort of leaders that I think in my mind that Muhammad ﷺ would have been like. Now, going back to the other topic where you talked about where he married Aisha radiallahu anha when she was 9, I've had two different opinions about that. At one point, I used to think that her age is wrong. She wasn't really 9. She was a lot older, and I've seen that evidence as well. I'm not so sure on that evidence now. Was that even accurate evidence? But some people do claim to believe that the age of Aisha radiallahu is not correct. She was a lot older. There's also another argument in terms of, 9 in the 7th century for a woman to get married wasn't considered to be wrong. Nobody would have thought, Prophet ﷺ is 40 years old and he's marrying a 9-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 16-year-old or whatnot is wrong. Within their time frame, that was considered to be okay. Now, the reason for that is societal values in terms of our morals changes with time. Things that we today think is okay, if you go into the future, they may look back and think that's wrong. An example would be like slavery, for argument's sake. Slavery, you go back 300 years ago, not before the Industrial Revolution. Let's go 400 years back. Let's go 400 years ago. Somebody used to talk about slavery within that period. They'll say, yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the way it is. Today, when we look back on slavery, we think, oh, it's absolutely wrong. The point I'm making about Aisha radiallahu anha and the age of marriage is, at that time, it wasn't considered to be wrong. And if it was going to be wrong, if it was to be considered wrong, his critics, the pagans, they would have absolutely jumped on it. But nobody criticized it within his time frame. It's only now that we say, well, hold on a minute, this doesn't sound right to us, because our morals with time has changed. And that's just a natural process of our societies change their values and their thinking with time. That's a normal process. That's the way I've understood it.
Interesting. You mentioned moral, and being a Muslim, you of course believe that on objective morality, right? That morals are absolute and they're sourced, rooted on Allah, right? He's the one that dictates, and divine command theory, basically. But then if you use this approach that, hey, the societal norms at that time, it was different from today. So it's morality is then relative to the society and the circumstance and context of the person. But so are you saying, though, that Allah's morals, and what he says and tells us or dictates to us to be good or bad or immoral or moral changes as well over time, and according to
what I was going to say was this issue to me isn't something as clear as black and white. It's not a simple answer. It's more of a gray area. There are some things that one of the biggest values that religion adds to human life is telling us morals. What is right, what is wrong. Stealing is wrong, murdering is wrong, so forth and so on. Do you get it? Morals in terms of what is right and wrong. At the same time, I also recognize that if you go from society to society, certain things that we think is right, other societies will find is wrong. So morals are also dictated by society as well. So it's not just a simple case of, religion tells us what is right and wrong, morals, or society tells us what is right and wrong. I think it's more of a case of religion tells us what is right and wrong, and society tells us what is right and wrong. There isn't a question of or. If you take out the or and you replace it with and, it kind of like merges the two together. And that's the way I.
So what I'm taking from this is that Allah's morality, what He tells us to be right or wrong, is in the same way. I'm not gonna say contingent, but directly correlated to the societal norms available in the area as well. Let's say back 2,000, 3,000 years ago, cannibalism was moral, right? And this socially accepted. Would you say then that at that time, the cannibalism was all right, really, because they were struggling and they were in famine, so it's okay to eat some people to survive because it was necessary, right? If you use that argument, it's sort of the same thing.
Well, I understand what you mean. It's like if I was, you're right. If I was living 2,000 years ago and struggling for food was a challenge, from a religious point of view, to justify cannibalism, what I would probably say, and I'm guessing and I'm thinking off the top of my head, is I'd say, well, you don't kill someone to eat. But if someone dies, and this isn't my belief, but if we're talking about cannibalism, justifying it, if someone's already dead and you need to eat, then eat them. It's a bit like that movie, I don't know if you've seen it, where they have a plane crash.
Yeah, I watched that.
You've seen it, they had a plane crash and they're stuck in the middle of nowhere. It's either die or eat the dead human beings that are already dead. What do? You have to survive. So in that sort of situation, I would justify cannibalism. And Islam also does teach us to a certain extent necessity. If you're in a life-death situation, things that are normally wrong, you can do. You're allowed to do.
Okay. Well, in a way, like for example, I watched this video in defense of the age that. Sorry.
Yeah, you either have death and starvation, or you eat another human being that's already dead, or a criminal that's been executed for whatever reason, then I'd say you do it, in that society, within that context. That would be my take.
I see. Interesting.
I'll try and add it, I'll try and be as morally, you try and apply a little bit of morality to it. Do you see what I mean? It wouldn't be completely immoral.
All right. Well, of course, it really depends as well on if you do in fact believe in Allah, right? And you have and this is your understanding of morality in terms of your theology, then maybe it is applicable, right? But that's very valid. That's a valid point. Yeah, in fact, and a lot of Christians and other religions, where they would use the same thing. Right, but when you take it to an atheist, and he would say, at any point in time, it's just immoral for this act to be done, no matter what the society or the social norms were, right? Well, what would you say to that?
So what is it? I was listening to this talk by Lawrence Krauss. You must know him, Krauss.
Yeah.
Yeah, Krauss, a famous atheist, right? So he was asked similar sort of question about morality and whatnot, and he was asked a question about incest, right? Mm-hmm. And he completely shocked me. He justified incest. Now, in my mind, there is nothing that can justify incest. Nothing, absolutely nothing. But he justified it. So for me, atheists, when it comes to morals, their morals are something I wouldn't be able to relate with an atheist in terms of moral, because for them, really, there is nothing that is governing them. Absolutely nothing that governs them. But from a theist point of view, when it comes to these difficult moral decisions, there is some kind of moral compass. There is something there as a moral compass. But with atheists, after Krauss started justifying incest, my conclusion was that atheists really have no moral compass. It's whatever and anything that goes. And I found that a little bit, I don't know, uncomfortable, weird, strange. But to him, it's fine. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Okay, well, let's move on then. That's that was an awesome topic. Yeah, okay. Interesting. So when it comes to the future of Islam, right? I'm talking about Dawha here. What is your take on it? Like, should it be on a international scale, like some Armageddon someday, or maybe, or is it just a cultural exchange where eventually Islam will spread throughout the world and we would all be Muslims? Like, what's your take on that?
Okay, Armageddon. Are we talking about before Armageddon or during Armageddon?
Before.
Okay, before Armageddon, it would be pretty much how we are seeing the world right now. You've got your different religions and communities, sometimes living in periods of peace, other times living in periods of conflict. There isn't this case of I think it's a difficult one, because Islam is an expanding religion in terms of it does want new followers. Christianity is the same. It wants new followers. It wants converts. Some religions are like this, or many religions are like this, I think. I think even Hinduism, to a certain extent, it wants converts. It wants people to buy into its idea. We're no different. We propose an idea. It works like this. This is the theology. This is the religion. This is the belief system. If you like it, accept it. If you don't like it, don't accept it. There isn't a sense of forcing the idea upon others. That isn't within our scripture. To force your religious values and beliefs upon another group of people by force. We don't have that sort of in our scripture anyway. So in terms of before Armageddon, it's just the way it is at the minute. It's just an exchange of ideas. The Christians will give their ideas, the Hindus will give their ideas, the Sikhs will give their ideas. We will give our idea. And it's up to individuals to, based on merit, in terms of which idea they feel is the most, sensible in terms of a belief system. And the other point I do want to make is that when people look at Islam, they probably look at Saudi Arabia because that's our two holiest sites in terms of the way that they visualize what Islam would look like in Europe, for argument's sake. They think, well, if the Muslims continue on their growth, we're going to end up with another Saudi Arabia in France and Germany. There is that fear. I believe that if you look at it holistically across the whole world, Islam looks very different in different parts of the world. And Islam in Europe and America will look very different to how it looks in Saudi Arabia, just because of the way nature works. Do you see what I mean? So there'll always be different religions and communities and whatnot before Armageddon. There'll always be a mixture of, different faiths and different beliefs.
And I want to know though, like in your life there, what's your life purpose? What direction do you want to take, and simply who are you, and who do you in the grand scale of things, who is
in the grand scale of things, I'm just a piece of dust. You know, in the grand scale of things, if you think about it, it's just nothing. My objective is to make sure that, one, I get myself into heaven. Yeah. So I need to do enough for me to get into heaven. And at the same time, my kids, I need to make sure that my kids and my family get into heaven as well. And they don't become, they don't have, sin is sin, everyone sins, but there's this thing of belief as well, not to lose faith in God, not to lose faith in the Islamic religion. That's something that I care about. I'm not when you say who's Abdus, Abdus is a sinner like everybody else, right? But Abdus at the same time believes in God, and Abdus at the same time wants to go to heaven, and at the same time Abdus wants his family to go to heaven with him as well, and his friends and family, so that's what I'm trying to do anyway with what I'm writing.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, there you go. You have Abdus here. He's a speck of dust, but he's an awesome speck of dust. And hopefully you can listen and again and share this episode. And hopefully we can have Abdus on the podcast again. Maybe he could debate someone or have just have a discussion with someone with a different point of view. And bro, it's been awesome talking to you, man. I miss this so much, and I hope you have a great day. Okay.
Have a great day, man. Cheers. Thank you. Bye.
The skills and credentials you need for the career you want are within reach at University of Maryland Global Campus. An accredited state university, UMGC offers online courses, personalized advising, lifetime career services, and more. Visit umgc.edu/podcast.
It used to be hard to find the exact auto parts you needed, and that meant spending a lot of time at swap meets. It's a different game now when you can order exactly what you need from eBay Motors. They have 122 million parts, so you can always find the right fitment. Spend less time searching and more time building with the eBay Motors app, or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.